Hello and welcome to the Self-Storage Made Simple podcast. I'm your host, Thaddeus Campbell. Really excited today to introduce somebody to the audience, and really not introduce because a lot of you know him. He's been a powerhouse in the industry now for going on 2 decades. I've been in association with his company, but hadn't gotten a chance to meet him until recently at the SSA show. So really want to just say thank you and grateful to Brett Henry, the CEO of Trojan Storage, for coming on and joining us on the podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I always start the podcast the same way. Self-storage, such a niche industry. I'm always excited to hear how people got into this amazing industry that we work in. So I know your story is pretty interesting. I want to hear Brett Henry's story of getting into self-storage.
Yeah, so I graduated college in 2000. I wanted to be a developer, and I happened to get a job with some of the kind of pioneers in self-storage. I started as an operations analyst in their company. They had 12 sites in Southern California, and they kind of told me that if I did a good job, that they were, building storages and development could be in my future. And but I did really well there. I found that a lot of their managers were stealing. The properties kind of needed some help and some operational efficiencies. And so I quickly got promoted there. I was running the company, reporting to the owners within a couple of years, and really got an opportunity to learn kind of the ins and outs on some original portfolio products, built in the late 70s, mid 80s, and really was able to kind of get educated, learn about the business, how it really functioned, and saw the opportunity that the impact I had at these sites, that I thought between me and my partner we could find additional sites that were maybe not managed correctly and undervalued, and buy them and increase revenue and efficiencies. And so my first 7 years was working for self-storage management company, and then we founded Trojan Storage in 2007.
Fantastic time to found a new business, right? You're headed into the Great Recession. Obviously everyone talks about self-storage, and we hear recession proof all the time, gets thrown around. But tell me about the challenge of starting a new company in 2007, because even though storage may be recession proof, it's not like you had a big portfolio and were able to rely on earnings. You were going out to try and buy new assets and raising money and finding debt at that time, not the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah, the day we tried to rate lock our loan with Wells Fargo was the day they fired their subprime division. And so when they called us back the next day, the whole loan had changed. The rate was much more expensive. It was lower leverage, and we were pretty kind of tied into the property. And so, the advantage we had back then was, the timing was probably perfect, because cap rates at that were 7, 8, and which meant that when you bought the asset, you actually bought a little bit of cash flow too. Yeah. And so, I'm because operations is my background, when we started, all these third-party management companies fundamentally didn't really exist. And, Extra Space wasn't Extra Space yet. Life Storage was Uncle Bob's. Public wasn't doing any management. And even the big regional guys, who are now national guys, really weren't doing it much. And so, the nice part for me is I was able to live off the management fee. And then, I've always thought that improving efficiencies and increasing rates is much easier than filling up a new building. So for us, really, as we were able to take that original building, which was in Ranch Cucamonga, and add 30-40% to the revenue over a few years, almost all that dropped down to the bottom line. And so, I think the challenging parts over the last 4 or 5 years is, the way cap rates have gone. Nowadays when you buy a building, you're always underwater to start, and you got to kind of build through that before you see any cash flow.
I was going to ask that question because you talked about that when you start in 2007, the avenue obviously is go find value adds, because easier to increase the value of an existing facility. We know, right? 36, 42, some people even underrating to 48 months to fully occupy a ground up development. That's changed for you guys along the road, though. You're now doing ground up development. I'd love to pick your brain about why that shift in philosophy.
Yeah, so we had an opportunity in 2017 to sell our original 16 assets, and we got so much value out of them. We essentially turned a $75 million portfolio to 250 million. And because John and I aren't really syndicators, we owned a majority of the equity. So, those products were in, Colorado Springs and Surprise, Arizona, and Minneapolis and Inland Empire, Sacramento. Not the most amazing markets in the world. They were good, but we were more concerned about their demographics coming into what, in 2017 we kind of thought we were at the end of this run, which was very, very wrong. But we thought that for us to continue as a storage company, we had to really go into development. And development's allowed us to pick where we want to be. And really the value add has become more challenging, with all the third party management. It used to be 7 or 8 offers was a lot of offers. Then on the last building we did, there was, 25 offers. And it just makes it so difficult to get in because you don't even need to be an operation person anymore. You just, everyone's kind of using the same projections to go forward. And so, development's allowed us to go in and do the hard work. It's frustrating, but the entitlement process, we've done a lot in Los Angeles, in San Jose, where it's very, very difficult to get it done. And, that's become our new value add. And so, instead of waiting for one-off sites to come out in LA, which they don't do very often, and when they do, everybody wants them. We thought we'd go create our own product. And that's really been the focus over the last, 6 or 7 years.
I'm interested in and want to dive into this a little bit because you guys are one of the top 60 owners in the country of self-storage. I haven't seen an updated thing, but you have a strong portfolio in the storage space. Your team is very small. You are not a hundreds of people organization, and you're competing in terms of size of portfolio with people much bigger than you. So I'm interested to pick your brain a little bit about, and I happen to be close with Lauren Feeney, who's on your staff, and think the absolute world of her, and have felt the same way about anyone I've come in contact that works in your greater sphere. So I want to pick your brain a little bit about the importance of the people you surround yourself with and how you, I guess, use criteria to pick those people, because they've obviously been very successful for you.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, our acquisition team is Laura and me and Cole. And so, and really for the development team, we've got a contractor on staff and he's got a little help, and we've got an entitlement engineer. But, the first is I'm super active in the pipeline and the process. So I really am our director of development. I manage it. But the other part is we've really been able to, develop great talent. Lauren came to us out of college. She worked on the operations sides for 5 years. She was really talented. But we actually thought her real skill set was going to be on kind of the acquisition and business development side. As you know, Lauren's just talented. She can do the analytics, she can do the smart people stuff, but then she's great with people and she's great with digging things up. She knows everything that's going on. And so we've always felt like for us to be successful, we have to be dialed in. And me personally, I mean, I'm fundamentally the decision maker with my partner. It's our money, it's our funds. It's kind of what separates us. We've never used a dollar of institutional capital, so we never have another phone call to make when we want something. We've never bailed out of a deal because the equity wasn't there, because it comes out of our bank account. And so that doesn't mean we don't have some investors that have been great, that have been with us 17 years and are a strong part of us. But John and I at this point own almost 80% of Trojan Storage. Because we own so much of it, we're also able to give really good incentives. So not only do I think we pay competitively, but all of our staff, from receptionists to accountants to admin, has some equity in our funds that they get to vest in for free. And so, not for free, their time and their energy is really what's paying for it. But we want everybody to be aligned, that if we're ever to sell again, that everybody feels that benefit. Last time we wrote a couple $1 million in bonuses when we did it, but we want people to feel secure. And so I think the alignment's really good, that you take Lauren specifically, she knows that if she finds something and we do that project like we just did, we just signed up a project in Gardena. Lauren was a big part of that she's going to have equity in the deal. And that makes sense to us. So I think alignment's allowed us to keep a small team together, communicate well, and we're all kind of rowing the same way.
I love that idea of everyone's into the same boat, right? You're all rowing in the same direction because and the only way to get that is if somebody feels like they actually own a piece of the boat, right? You don't
Right.
act like an owner unless you're really an owner.
Yeah, fees are great, commissions are amazing. Everybody likes them. We all eat with it, but you want to know that there's something more that you can build. Liquidity events, generally speaking, are what create wealth. And if you don't have equity, you can't have a liquidity event. And so, even in the distributions that are coming out, it's fun. Like we were just looking at them, a couple hours ago. It's fun to see all the profit sharing units and all the payments, and they're hundreds of thousands of dollars that are going to everybody. So they know as they increase the revenue, yeah, bonuses, they get all that, but then they've got that other piece that whenever it does well, everyone's doing well. And so I think that's been something that's been really strong for us in all our different divisions.
I love that idea, and listen, it's easy to talk about. It's a little harder to do, right? Because you're taking your profits and you're giving them to other people. I'm interested to know I guess where that mindset came from. How did you get to this place where Brett Henry is comfortable? Because you didn't always start having 80% of a nice portfolio, right? You started from scratch. How did you
Right.
get to this place where it was your mindset to share the wealth, so to speak?
Yeah, I think the nice part about the first sale was that, from our investors to us, everybody did really, really well. I mean, essentially you took $25 million dollars of equity and turned it into over 175 million of profit. And so, I think sometimes everyone can lose a little bit of sight of what's important. And I remember when we announced that we were going to sell the portfolio, you could feel the tension in our corporate office. It wasn't very big then, right? There was only 10 of us, but you could kind of sense that no one likes change. It's just like when you buy a storage facility, you walk in and there's that manager, they're not sure if you're about to uproot their life and kick them out of their apartment and their job. And so, when John and I really sat down and said, what do we want as we rebuild this? Well, we wanted we wanted to get rid of that unease. We wanted everyone to feel like they had some piece of it. And then, we've been able to create a structure that allows us to keep enough equity that for us to give a good chunk of it away, you know, I want to say felt right, but it felt right. It felt like, again, everybody had alignment. And if everyone looks at the same thing and says, hey, the pie gets bigger, and it's just not the two owners that are getting, money off this, that we're all getting off. And I thought and John thought that was going to be meaningful as we really tried to grow a business. And I mean, I think we've done about $500 million of projects over the last, call it 6 years, through development and acquisitions. And to get that much done and be, I think we've built almost 3 million square feet, generally speaking, in California, which is really, really hard to do. To get that done with a small team, you need people who stay. You need people who are willing to take calls at night. You need people who work on the weekends, and you need agreement. You need to spend less time dealing with HR issues and more time just talking about the projects and what we're trying to do. And so it's I'm confident that our alignment with our entire group is what has led to our success.
I love that. It's you're going to have enough issues to answer and challenges to face in the development, especially where you're choosing to develop, because
Right.
you're not going to. You just opened a store here in New Jersey, close to where I live, and then obviously in California. You're talking about places where some people purposefully avoid
Right.
because of the challenges of getting something from a piece of raw land to an actual finished constructed building on numerous levels, whether that's the entitlement process, whether it's the cost of the land, whether it's dealing with the cost of construction in those areas. I'd love to pick your brain a little bit about why you purposefully choose those areas. And you said it right. You do development because you get to pick where you want to go, and you've purposely picked places that are challenging.
We every time things get hard, and they get hard for all of us. We always kind of fall back to that slogan: if it was easy, everybody would do it. And the I think Los Angeles is the best market in the country. And I know you can throw up a couple with it, but the beauty of LA is, there's we've got sites that have 1 million people in 5 miles.
Yeah.
And the odds of one, it would take a lot of new development to really displace and feel like we were getting underwater from a supply and demand point. But also when times do get a little tough, and right now, I mean, anything that's not LA for us is generally speaking at 87, 88% occupancy. Our LA stuff's still at 92. It's not ripping like it was 2 years ago. Um, but it's hanging on. And with the attitudes of especially the blue liberal cities, they're focused on affordable housing. They're focused on tax generation, and storage doesn't produce that. If anything, we damage it. And so as cities continue to put down moratoriums, which we've got a building in the city of Commerce, it's got a moratorium. We have a city in a property in Campbell, in Camarillo, they both have moratoriums now. That we think that's going to become more common. And so for us, let's be where supply is little, because that's what saves our industry. If Amazon could come put in 2 million square feet in each market, then your rates would go to nothing. It wouldn't be worth being in this business.
Right.
So that's really our motivation, is where do we get, maybe not always it's the biggest best return of all time, but what's going to protect us the most as we kind of move through these properties for the next 20, 25 years.
I got exposed to a software called Proprise in April at ISS and use it, and I'm always amazed because you can go in and you can enter your data that you want as far as population, income, price per square foot that the existing facilities are showing on their web rates and street rates. Like LA comes up more than any other area of the country every time. Just to go to your point, you're talking about an area that's already very well developed. So the idea of going and finding sites there, it's not an easy process. It's you find something, it's a challenge, which then goes to the biggest detriment you have as a storage owner, right? Is going to be a competitor opening up down the street, much less likely to have that happen in those markets.
And one competitor is usually fine. It's when it's five.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's when it becomes a challenge, because we've always explained to people that when you build a new storage, you're not creating demand, you're servicing demand. Yeah. And I think sometimes people miss that. And so I've listened to people talk about they're building another site, and they're looking at, well, once all these are full, but it's going to take them years. And we've got one project in Portland that had a property went in before we did. Then we put ours in, and then 4 more came in, and it's now starting to manage. But I mean, we opened that in 2020. We're finally at 80%, but we're still doing rates that are 30 cents below what we really expected to do. It's going to be okay, because I think the demographics are overall good. But it just shows when 4 sites are competing for everything, 10 by 10s are $60, right?
I'm interested to pick your brain a little bit as someone who's been in this industry for more than 20 years. How much has that changed in the last 5, 6, 7 years as far as just the sheer number of people that are coming in to develop storage?
Yeah, it's the amount of people has been, I think, significant, because we've been approached by different funds at different times to come in and want us to develop. And anyone can do it now, because it used to be you kind of, the money would partner with the sponsor, and the sponsor was the operational and the expertise, and they'd run it and the money was there. But now, Extra Space will run it for you. You just need the money. And so, we're seeing more and more, and it's obviously it's a little cool this minute, but how many people are doing their first or second site, and it's got Extra Space on it and Life Storage on it and CubeSmart on it. And it's that proliferation of third-party management. It's been good for valuations, because there's just a ton of buyers. But I think it's been a little bit more challenging, because, as you said, with more competition, it just drains rates. And so, we've seen a lot. It's still hard to do, but again, I think what happens, and sometimes I'm not sure there's the right incentive in real estate, right? My group, we've never taken development fees. We don't take acquisition fees. We don't put asset management fees on it. We try to make it a play where, I don't make money, my partner doesn't make money until the site is profitable and our equity is worth something, right? Because charging a 5 or 6% development fee where you make $1 million up front for doing the deal, sometimes then people are just going to do deals. And that may not be everybody, but we've seen it. And so, I sometimes in the states that really allow storage where there's, you look at Radius or any of the other technologies and you can see all these blue dots. Well, that's just because land's $1 million or $2 million and they can go build 110,000 square feet and everyone's off and
Pocket
running.
a $600,000-$700,000 development fee and a construction management fee and an
Right.
acquisition fee, and
And so
yep,
then you worry about people are like incentivized to spend money versus being incentivized to do a good project. And I think it's what's protected us is at the end of the day, we always want to be aligned with employees, with investors, with ourselves, with the capital we use, because that way, you know, no one can ever look at me and say, well, you're just doing that deal, or Brett, you've got so much equity on the back end. What if it doesn't go well? Well, then I put all this time in and I'm not getting anything. We guarantee the loans, we do all that kind of stuff, and we're the biggest investor in Trojan. So no investors put more money in than John and I. And we just want everyone on the same page and doing well together. And if it doesn't do well, then the money should go to the people with cash in first. And so, I think, the other part about storage is it's generally speaking harder to get burnt. People do get burnt,
yeah.
but we're in such a good industry that you can kind of make a mistake, and sometimes just our business is good enough to get you out of it.
Someone was asking me that today about I live right next to Voorhees, New Jersey, and there's two sites that opened recently and a third coming. And a local broker, I'm looking at a piece of land for a completely different project, not to do storage on. And he's like, are these three storage facilities going to make it? And my response to him was, once they get built, it might take them a little longer to get where they want to be, but usually they'll be okay if they can get the doors open. The
Yep.
challenge is, and I'm interested to hear your take on it. A day doesn't go by I don't get 3 or 4 emails from brokers with entitled some stage, whether fully permitted or whatever, storage development sites. And how many of these are sites that somebody bought the land already, took an entitlement fee on the front end, and now can't find the debt and equity to go build it? Are we going to see any, are those going to get built? Are there going to be a chunk of those that just, somebody eats a significant loss there for their investors?
The challenge with entitlement is the length. It doesn't, like, we've got projects in LA that have taken 4 years to get entitled. But even in other places, it could be a year. It's a process. And so, the challenge is a lot of the decisions that were made in mid 2022.
Yeah.
And May and April of 2022 were the two best self-storage months I've ever seen in my life of 25 years. We had two buildings, Commerce, which is 192,000 square feet, and Glendale, which is 170,000 square feet. Those two assets rented like 800 units in those 2 months.
Wow.
We literally had to send supervisors over there just to help just keep people like floating in an assembly line.
Yep.
Right. And so what happened was supply and demand altered and everybody was full, which meant that everybody raised their rates. And there were some places near me that I remember some of our development people, from a couple of years ago said, well, we're going to go build in San Bernardino. And for me, that was always a 85 cent a foot kind of trash market that you could buy in, but I'd never build in. And, but Extra Space was charging on their website $250 for a 10 by 10. And so they said, well, that's the market. But it wasn't the market. It was a 2022 glitch.
Yeah.
And now when you look at it, it's back to what generally I think it is. And so that's the real challenge is when we were building in 18, 19, and 20, everything went with us. Rates went up, interest rates went down, and construction costs were 60 to 75 bucks a foot.
Yeah.
Now interest rates, right this minute they've dipped, but they were 8.5% for 9% for some people, which has been challenging. Construction prices have gone absolutely crazy. Land prices went crazy, and then rates have been going down. And
Yeah.
so when everything works against you, right, then it doesn't, like, I've probably looked at more land. I've even had brokers send me land where like the imputed value of the land for what they were trying to do was zero.
Yeah. 100%.
And it's hard for them. Someone just in the Bay Area wanted to sell me land for $10 million. And their argument was, well, go find me an acre in this area for less than $10 million. And I said, I'm not here to argue your land price.
You're
I'm
looking
here
at
to
it.
say that you
Yeah,
can't do that project at $10 million because
right.
I just bought a piece of land for $1 million in LA,
Yeah.
right? Like it's different. The world's different. And so,
Been a
maybe,
while for people to come to grips with that fact on the
yeah.
broker and seller side, quite frankly, right? They're riding that wave of 2020, 21, 22, where
And
projects could pencil with stupid land prices because you go on Radius and the rates are 250 for a 10 by 10.
and that's the problem is people who from the outside look and say, well, Extra Space has a $250 10 by 10. Now, what are they saying today when Extra Space is doing that 10 by 10 for 100? And I
Or
know Extra
60.
Space in 4 months and in 8 months and in 12 months and in 16 months and 20 months is going to give them $40 and $50 rent increases, right?
Right.
And get them up. I understand that. But today that rate's 100. And
And I can't
so
take that rate increase to the bank and get them to underwrite my project,
that's
right?
right.
All I
That's
can
right.
take is what the web rate or street rate. Yeah, I might get them to accept the street rate, if I'm lucky.
Right. And that's really, I've seen more entitled dirt try to come our way. And I mean, some of it we've just straight like we're not interested. And then once we start talking what the price is going to look like, it's way below what they bought the land for.
Yeah, 100%.
And so they got to either figure something else out or sell it to somebody else, obviously. But I think from a development standpoint, I'm generally one of the more aggressive people. And so, I think that's been a challenge. And then the other challenge is we're always conservative. We always use 6% for interest rates, regardless of where we are in the world. So that did really well for us, over the last 5 or 6 years. But you take the last two specifically, our construction loans are 275, 300 plus SOFR. Those were, 8 to 8.3, 8.4. And like that extra interest rate on, we had $100 million variable debt until recently, that was painful, that extra 3%.
Yeah.
And, so I think all of those factors have made people with COs that are maybe not in the strongest markets where they thought, a buck 80, buck 90 was their rate and they're getting 90 cents and they don't see an out. I think those are challenges that are going to continue to come. And then, yeah, I think entitled land and permitted land, I think that's going to be that's the next piece because until both interest rates, construction costs, and rates go at least stabilize, and I think we're at the bottom of how bad things are. I think we're probably going to be here for a little bit longer, and then start to see some growth as houses start to move again. But it's just going to be challenging for them.
I'm interested to get your take. Inside our company, we thought there might come a time when, especially some of these new developments, with the drop in rates, got pinched and were forced to sell because they couldn't get to a place where they could refi and get out of a construction loan. Do you see us have we gotten to a place where we still might have that glut of things come on the market with people in distressed situations, or do we go back to what we said earlier, where in storage, you tend to keep your nose above water?
Yeah, I think in the strong markets you won't see it because the markets would be too strong, and there's going to be enough equity that there's going to be a solution. I think it's going to be the tertiary markets where people really overextended themselves, and probably that's why I say alignment needs to be right because you can always make a case for whatever you want, generally speaking, for the rates you want to find in a market, right? If you've got a preconceived notion of what it takes to get a deal done, I think those are the buildings you're going to see really continue to come. And we've seen them. We have seen brokers who put stuff out at 30 million and given us a call back and said, "Hey, guidance is down to 24." We're surprised, but who today, right this minute, really wants to buy a 35% CO that's leasing up at 75 cents that you feel like you got to get up to a buck 50, buck 60 to make it work?
Yeah.
Who wants to run that right this minute unless you're getting a significant discount?
Yeah.
And that's just the reality. And so, yeah, I do think you're going to see more. I don't know what kind of areas they're going to be in, and I think there may be some good resets in basis, but obviously interest rates coming down may help that. But it's still interest rates still have, even with 200 more basis points, you're still going to be in the high fives.
We're 30 minutes into this, and I haven't even had a chance to talk to you about Quick Store, which was something I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk
Please.
about. That's how your booth and your staff at the SSA show out in Vegas in September was unbelievable. I got a chance to demo the
Thank
product.
you.
Talk to me a little bit about the marriage of Trojan and Quickstore and why that came about and why this software was something you wanted to move into.
Yeah, so we used Quickstore at Trojan until the sale, and the only reason we left was we had to do accrual accounting for the buyer for an earnout, and they just didn't do that. And so in the during COVID, we were approached by Quickstore. I'm very close with who's still a partner, Dennis Levitt, and he approached us and said, "Hey, listen, I think I'm at the tail end of wanting to run this day to day. We'd like you guys to be involved." And so we were able to cut a deal where we were really clear with what we wanted to do, which is we wanted to take down their software all the way to the beginning. So we started over with brand new infrastructure, brand new architecture. And the genesis of this was the one thing that is concerning to me is the fact that private equity is going to continue to come in our space, and it's starting to hit our vendors, and then our vendors are buying our vendors. It concerns me, and so it's not to say that it can't be good, but I think it's bad for competition. So for us, we didn't want to be at the mercy of private equity owning Storable, or if they were to resell again, or anything else that's going to go on. And we really didn't see another option. We said, there's Intuit, or there's Oracle, or there's somebody else that could really, do what we wanted and we thought would be reasonable. And so we've had to, it's not to say that I think that Storable's bad. I think lack of competition is bad. 100%. And so we set out to do something where we felt like an operator who's got 25 years of being very, very active in running storage with a lot of different people that have been helping with, our CTO has built many platforms and sold them. So we have a good expertise on both. And what we wanted to do was make sure we had true cloud architecture where it was fast and responsive and scalable, where your reports didn't take 5, 10, 15 minutes. They were accurate. Your managers could move things through fast. And so we looked at the software and we looked at the users, how the manager uses it, how the supervisor uses it, how the accountants use it, how the owners use it. And so by bringing all that together, we felt we could go back and control, have a software that's not owned by private equity that can go compete in the market. And hopefully, I think it's good. I think it's good that Tenant Inc. exists. I think it's good that, the self-storage manager and some of the others that have come out. I'd like to see that when I go to buy properties, that it's not always the same two softwares. It used to be you'd see 5 or 6 or 7 softwares. So, I think that was the genesis of why we did it, and then just making sure that the reports were actually by operators. I'm tired of maybe people that don't run storages, showing me how they think it should be done. We know where the industry is moving. We think it's going to become less manpower, more automation, more virtual managers, more. We've put millions of dollars into Noki. We've done DoorBoss. We've been testing lots of different solutions, and we really needed a back-powered cloud system that we could make changes in to make sure it was kind of the next generation of how storage owners can run their properties and have good controls of what's happening.
Brett Henry, I'm going to wrap this up because I've already taken up more of your time than I asked you for. I could literally go on for hours and hours. Cannot thank you enough for sharing the wisdom and the experience. I was looking forward to this interview. It's been more enjoyable than I even anticipated. So I appreciate that. I hope someday we can have you come back on and have a deeper conversation. Brett Henry, CEO of Trojan Storage. You guys can see down on the bottom links to find more about Quickstore and to find more about Trojan Storage. We'll get you hooked up with that. Really appreciate your time. And please say hello to Lauren for me. And thank you to her for getting the introduction and making sure we were able to get you to come on. Thanks for your time.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I enjoyed it.
That's it for this week's episode of the Self-Storage Made Simple podcast. I want to thank my friends at PropRise for sponsoring the show. As always, outpacing the self-storage industry to find your next deal. You can check them out at www.proprise.io. I'm your host, Thaddeus Campbell. Again, thank you to the CEO of Trojan Storage, Brett Henry, and we'll see you guys next week.